Was this the single most expensive minute of Russia's war so far? At precisely 5:22 a.m., a thunderous chain of explosions lit up the Bryansk region deep inside Russian territory. What local officials first described as a minor fire quickly turned into an inferno, stretching for hundreds of meters, a catastrophic Ukrainian precision strike that annihilated an $800 million shipment of North Korean ammunition bound for the front. Within minutes, the sky glowed red. Freight cars burst apart, and Moscow's most secret supply line burned on camera. How did a single strike ripple through the entire logistics network of one of the world's largest armies? That question now drives intense analysis across Western defense circles. According to satellite data reviewed by BBC News and Defense News, the impact zone corresponded precisely with Russia's Western Logistics Corridor, a critical artery connecting Pyongyang's covert deliveries to ammunition depots, feeding the Donetsk and Luhansk fronts. The explosions weren't random. Ukrainian intelligence, backed by NATO's reconnaissance grid, had tracked the cargo for weeks. Sources quoted by Reuters suggested that the train carried not only conventional artillery shells, but also specialized rocket components disguised as industrial cargo. This was a blow not just to supply, but to secrecy, said retired U.S. Army analyst Mark Hertling in an interview. Ukraine exposed the myth that Russia can operate its foreign arms pipeline beyond reach. The operation unfolded in 3 coordinated stages. Long-range drones created radar confusion, decoy signals mimicked false trajectories, and finally 2 guided missiles struck within seconds of each other. Thermal imaging captured by Western satellites showed a linear pattern of detonations, proof of synchronized targeting. The Bryansk air defenses failed to intercept the incoming wave, underscoring what DW military called a systemic vulnerability in Russia's layered shield. For Ukraine, this was more than another tactical victory. It was a symbolic demonstration that illicit cargo is no longer safe, no matter the distance. For Moscow, it was a dual humiliation, losing both irreplaceable materiel and the narrative of resilience it has tried to sell since 2022. Economically, the hit equated to nearly 2% of Russia's annual imported ammunition value, a staggering loss that may force emergency resupply talks with Iran and North Korea. In Washington, President Donald Trump's administration issued a measured statement reaffirming support for Ukraine's defensive precision operations, while NATO quietly praised Kyiv's growing long-range strike capability. Analysts within the alliance noted that this event validated the West's investment in Ukraine's domestic drone industry, which had become a cost-effective alternative to direct military aid. As the fire raged for hours, Russian emergency services could do little but contain the perimeter. Footage verified by Al Jazeera showed collapsing gantries, molten railbeds, and ammunition still detonating long after sunrise. Locals were evacuated, and regional power grids flickered under the pressure wave. By midday, Russian state channels erased mentions of North Korea, entirely reverting to their old script of technical malfunction. Yet every satellite orbiting the area told the opposite story: precision, coordination, exposure. The strategic message was unmistakable. Ukraine could reach far, hit hard, and dismantle Russia's hidden alliances without crossing any declared borders. Still, one question lingers: if Ukraine can pierce such a deep-shielded supply corridor once, what prevents it from doing so again? And where might it strike next? The flames in Bryansk marked not just an explosion, but an evolution. How deep did the web between Moscow and Pyongyang really go before the Bryansk blast tore it open? Intelligence trails suggest the arms route had been active since early 2024, camouflaged under agricultural and construction trade manifests. North Korea's state shipping firm Maritime Korea Logistics rerouted its freighters through Vladivostok and Nakhodka, where containers were offloaded disguised and sent by rail across western Russia. The Bryansk train was the crown jewel of that illicit chain, a shipment too large, too vital, and ultimately too visible. For months, satellite analysts from NATO's Joint Intelligence Center and Japan's Defense Ministry had flagged anomalies in cargo volumes leaving North Korean ports. According to Reuters and The Guardian, at least a dozen vessels carried military-grade crates labeled as steel machinery parts. Inside were 152 mm and 122 mm shells, short-range rocket engines, and propellant chemicals that violated UN Resolution 1874. The United Nations Panel on North Korea's Sanctions Monitoring had warned repeatedly of such exchanges, but Russia, as a permanent Security Council member, vetoed stronger inspections. Western defense officials now say the destroyed train carried nearly 45,000 artillery rounds and several hundred high-caliber rockets, enough to sustain frontline Russian barrages for more than 10 days. That's not resupply. That's a lifeline, remarked British analyst Dr. Jack Watling of RUSI in a BBC segment following the strike. And Ukraine just cut it clean. The motivation for both sides was brutally simple. Pyongyang traded weapons for hard currency food aid and access to Russian satellite technology. In turn, Moscow gained a stream of munitions to offset its dwindling domestic output. But the longer the trade persisted, the riskier it became. Al Jazeera reported that by mid-2025, Western cyber intelligence units had infiltrated several logistics firms managing Russian imports, mapping code words, train schedules, and decoy routes. One intercepted document listed Project Luna 22, believed to be the code name for the Bryansk delivery. This revelation shattered the Kremlin's denials. In Moscow, senior officials from the Ministry of Defense and the FSB traded accusations over how Ukrainian drones could have located the train so precisely. Leaked transcripts published by DW News described a breakdown in procedural secrecy. Even among Russian military bloggers, outrage brewed. Why were so many high-value assets concentrated on one line without air cover? Meanwhile, in Seoul, the South Korean Defense Ministry called the event a textbook consequence of North Korea's defiance of international law. President Yoon Suk-yeol urged closer coordination with NATO and the US to block future shipments, while the Japanese government tightened satellite tracking over East Asian waters. Both governments publicly commended Ukraine for enforcing sanctions where diplomacy had failed. Experts in Brussels now point to a new pattern, a clandestine triangle connecting North Korea, Iran, and Russia, each trading what the other lacks: missiles, drones, or fuel. These are not isolated black market deals, warned French military scholar François Heisbourg in Le Monde. They're evolving into a parallel arms economy. The Bryansk strike, he argued, sent a devastating market signal. The risk premium for doing business with Russia has just doubled. As the smoke cleared, one truth emerged from the ashes: secrecy itself had become a vulnerability. Every new deal, every unmarked container is now a potential beacon for Ukrainian satellites. But if this network has been exposed, can Moscow rebuild it? Or will desperation drive the Kremlin to even darker partnerships in the months ahead? How do you destroy an $800 million weapons convoy moving under Russia's deepest veil of secrecy? The answer lies in patience, precision, and partnership. According to Western defense briefings cited by Reuters and Defense News, Ukraine's operation was the culmination of 6 weeks of surveillance, algorithmic targeting, and international coordination, a fusion of modern warfare and human intelligence unseen since the Cold War. Ukrainian analysts at the security service SBU and the main intelligence directorate GUR first detected irregular communications on a secure Russian logistics frequency near Vladivostok in early August. AI-assisted pattern recognition, developed in cooperation with NATO's European Command, linked those pings to freight schedules later traced to Bryansk. The brilliance of the operation was its timing, noted former U.S. Air Force Colonel Cedric Leighton in a CNN Defense Analysis segment. Ukraine knew exactly when the cargo would be stationary, which sensors were off-duty and which radars were blind. In total, 4 Ukrainian long-range drones, likely of the Beaver and Morok series, acted as scouts, while 2 newer hybrid drones powered by AI-guided autopilots conducted the terminal strike. Military Watch magazine described these UAVs as part of Ukraine's Ghost Falcon initiative, capable of navigating jamming zones autonomously. Western experts estimate each drone cost under $150,000, making the cost-to-damage ratio one of the most efficient in warfare history, roughly $1 spent for every $5,000 destroyed. The drones flew under 100 meters to evade Russian radar, coordinating through encrypted uplinks tied to Western satellite constellations. Their flight paths mirrored civilian air traffic to mask signatures. Once inside range, they released precision munitions guided by laser targeting data provided by microsatellites. The first strike severed the train's power coupling. The second ignited the central car containing propellants. Within seconds, a chain reaction erupted, engulfing 400 meters of track. Russian air defenses at Bryansk, equipped with Pantsir S-1 systems, responded but too late. The electronic chaos caused by decoy drones overloaded their response matrix. This was an information war as much as a kinetic one, explained DW Military's Marcus Zehner. Ukraine didn't just strike metal, it struck confidence. In the aftermath, independent geospatial analysts compared the heat signatures to earlier strikes on oil refineries in Belgorod and Ryazan. The Bryansk explosion registered 5 times higher in thermal intensity. U.S. Space Command confirmed infrared flashes visible from orbit, consistent with detonating high-explosive shells and stored rocket motors. President Donald Trump, in a late-night briefing, reaffirmed NATO's continued intelligence sharing, emphasizing that every strike that weakens illegal arms flows makes Europe safer. While his statement avoided mentioning North Korea by name, Pentagon officials privately noted that the operation had been coordinated with U.S. reconnaissance assets under the Sky Sentinel surveillance umbrella. The aftermath within Russia was chaos. Drone debris was collected under heavy security, and regional officials scrambled to explain the colossal failure. Moscow's state TV minimized coverage, but independent reporters leaked footage of vast craters and twisted metal, a logistical artery severed overnight. For Ukraine, this marked a leap forward in warfare evolution, from reactive defense to proactive interdiction. A small nation using brains over bulk had just forced a global superpower into logistical retreat. But could this precision model be scaled? And if so, what happens when Ukraine turns it toward Russia's critical energy and fuel hubs next? What happens when a single explosion rattles not just one war zone, but the balance of power across 3 continents? The Bryansk strike was more than a military loss. It was a geopolitical tremor that exposed the fragility of Russia's alliances and the growing isolation of North Korea. Within hours, Pyongyang went silent. State TV replaced coverage of trade cooperation with Russia with images of farmers and parades. Yet behind closed doors, diplomats scrambled to contain the damage. In Moscow, the Kremlin convened an emergency meeting at the Ministry of Defense, chaired by Sergei Shoigu, and attended by the FSB's Logistics Division. According to leaked reports cited by Al Jazeera and DW News, internal blame erupted. Rail security accused the Air Defense Command of negligence, while the Defense Ministry privately admitted critical oversight in tracking sensitive cargo. The destruction of such a valuable shipment, nearly 45,000 artillery rounds and hundreds of specialized rockets, was not just a tactical setback. It triggered an economic chain reaction that experts compared to losing a small oil refinery overnight. Western financial analysts estimate that Russia will need over $900 million to replace the lost munitions, a sum it cannot easily raise amid declining export revenues and sanctions tightening since early 2025. This incident widens Russia's fiscal wound, said economist Anders Östlund in a Financial Times briefing. Each lost shipment forces Moscow to print more rubles, and each new ruble buys less steel and powder. For North Korea, the hit was equally devastating. Pyongyang had banked on this deal to replenish its dwindling fuel reserves and earn foreign currency amid drought-driven food shortages. The Guardian reported that at least 2 planned cargo exchanges were cancelled in the aftermath, while satellite imagery from 38 North showed inactivity at key munitions loading docks. Seoul's defense ministry declared the incident a wake-up call for the region, while Japan urged stricter maritime monitoring across the Sea of Japan. In Beijing, the reaction was characteristically restrained. China's foreign ministry urged all sides to avoid escalation, but insiders quoted by Reuters said Beijing was alarmed by the exposure of North Korea's involvement and its implications for regional stability. The Chinese leadership faces an uncomfortable reality. Its tacit tolerance for Russian-North Korean arms trade now risks international scrutiny. Meanwhile, NATO and EU officials privately described the strike as proof that Ukraine's intelligence network has reached maturity. President Donald Trump's administration lauded the operation's strategic brilliance, while reaffirming U.S. commitment to supporting Ukraine's defensive capabilities. The message from Washington was subtle but unmistakable. Ukraine's precision warfare now serves as a deterrent not only to Moscow, but to any nation willing to arm it. Economically, the ripple effects were immediate. Russia's domestic arms production is running at near maximum capacity, but factories in Tula and Perm cannot offset such a sudden loss. Defense Express reported that the Ministry of Industry redirected funds from civilian infrastructure projects to replenish missile inventories, drawing protests from regional governors. The ruble dipped and energy markets wobbled briefly before stabilizing. In Europe, the event strengthened calls for tightening export controls on dual-use components that still reach Russia through third parties. The EU's Foreign Affairs chief described the strike as a masterclass in defensive preemption. But beneath all the diplomatic spin lies a harsher truth. The Bryansk explosion revealed how deeply Russia's war economy depends on outlaw partnerships. And as those partnerships crumble under scrutiny, can Moscow still sustain the illusion of endless supply? Can a single strike redefine the strategy of an entire alliance? NATO commanders think so. The destruction of the North Korean shipment at Bryansk has already begun reshaping how Western militaries view hybrid warfare, where intelligence timing and information superiority can outweigh raw firepower. This wasn't just a strike, it was a demonstration, said Admiral Rob Bauer, chair of NATO's military committee, in remarks cited by BBC News. Ukraine proved that logistics, not territory, determine the momentum of modern war. In Brussels, senior analysts drew comparisons between the Bryansk operation and NATO's air-land battle doctrine from the late Cold War, which emphasized disrupting enemy supply chains rather than grinding through front lines. The parallels are striking. Long-range precision strikes, coordinated drone networks, and satellite-supported reconnaissance, all executed by a country operating with a fraction of Russia's defense budget. A Defense News report highlighted the domino effect analysis spreading through NATO's strategic circles. The logic is simple, but devastating. Every destroyed rail hub or convoy doesn't just reduce ammunition. It forces Moscow to divert resources from the front to repair, reroute, and guard new corridors. Each diversion stretches manpower, slows advances, and compounds economic fatigue. Ukraine has weaponized efficiency, noted U.S. military strategist Evelyn Farkas. They are making Russia pay 5 rubles for every dollar they spend. This asymmetric success has stirred debates within the alliance about how far to integrate Ukraine into its operational frameworks. President Donald Trump, in his recent address to NATO's defense ministers, reiterated that the United States supports innovation, not escalation, implying Washington will keep assisting Ukraine through intelligence and surveillance, rather than direct troop deployment. Yet his statement also hinted at a strategic recalibration, encouraging member states to adopt Ukraine's decentralized command models and real-time drone data sharing, something NATO planners are now studying for Europe's own defense. Meanwhile, DW military reported that Germany and Poland have increased intelligence cooperation with Kyiv, creating what one analyst called a data shield over Eastern Europe. This shield uses AI-assisted analytics to forecast Russian logistics movements, enabling Ukraine to strike with near-clinical precision. The Bryansk incident validated this model and may become a prototype for NATO's future deterrence strategy. From a psychological standpoint, the operation struck deeper than any missile could. Russian military bloggers lamented that no convoy feels safe anymore. Morale among frontline logistics officers reportedly dropped as crews began refusing to transport sensitive cargo near known strike zones. As Al Jazeera observed, the fear of being watched has become as paralyzing as the threat of being hit. Strategically, the opportunity cost for Moscow is mounting. To protect its arteries, Russia must now spend billions on decoys, escorts, and electronic warfare coverage diverting funds from battlefield replenishment. Every dollar Russia spends on defensive logistics is a dollar not spent on the front, said RAND analyst Dara Massakat. That's the trap Ukraine has set. For NATO, the takeaway is profound. The future battlefield belongs to those who control visibility, not volume. The Bryansk strike showed that data can be deadlier than explosives when fused with precision tools. Yet the question looming in every briefing room remains: if Ukraine can choke Russia's arteries, what happens when it starts targeting the heart, its refineries, shipyards, or command hubs? As dawn broke over Bryansk's scorched tracks, analysts across Washington, Brussels, and Seoul were already asking the next big question. Has Ukraine's long-range warfare entered a new phase that could reshape global power alignments? In the weeks following the strike, Western intelligence agencies noted a surge in Russian efforts to fortify critical logistics nodes and energy facilities, an implicit admission that Ukraine's reach now extends far beyond the battlefield. According to Reuters and Defense Express, Russia has begun rerouting some North Korean shipments through the Arctic corridor, using longer, costlier routes via Murmansk to avoid central Russia's exposed railway hubs. Military insiders in Moscow, cited by The Guardian, admitted that no corridor feels secure anymore. The loss of the $800 million Bryansk convoy forced the Kremlin to tighten oversight, but also revealed the staggering logistical strain of isolation. You can't defend every bridge, every track, every depot, one Western diplomat told DW News. That's how empires collapse from the supply chain inward. For Ukraine, the success marked the dawn of what some strategists now call intelligence-centric warfare. Kyiv's defense ministry confirmed that several long-range drone prototypes are being tested with real-time data integration from NATO reconnaissance satellites. A leaked Al Jazeera report hinted at new models capable of hitting targets as far as 1,500 kilometers, potentially reaching deep into the Urals. While officials denied direct NATO involvement, Western experts privately acknowledged that the operation's intelligence backbone relied on cooperative analysis, not direct targeting orders. President Donald Trump's national security team, in a recent White House briefing, described Ukraine's evolving strategy as a deterrence success story. Under Trump's administration, Washington has shifted to what insiders term support through innovation, focusing on advanced sensor systems, counter-drone defense, and battlefield AI, rather than expanding direct funding. It's a smarter form of aid, said retired U.S. General Ben Hodges. Ukraine is becoming the West's live laboratory for 21st century warfare. But beneath the celebration lies risk. Moscow's retaliation patterns suggest a dangerous escalation curve. Following the Bryansk disaster, Russia launched over 40 missile strikes on Ukraine's infrastructure, including power grids and fuel depots, in an attempt to project strength. Yet as BBC News observed, many of those strikes hit empty facilities or decoys, a testament to Kyiv's growing sophistication in deception and resilience. Meanwhile, Pyongyang has gone underground, literally. Satellite images analyzed by Yonhap News show new tunnels at North Korean arms depots, likely to obscure future exports. Experts warn that smaller fragmented shipments could replace large convoys, making detection harder but not impossible. The more North Korea hides, the more data Ukraine collects, said military analyst Michael Clark on Sky News. Geopolitically, the strike fractured a fragile axis. Iran has hesitated to expand drone shipments amid fears of Western retaliation. China continues walking a tightrope, publicly urging calm while quietly restricting dual-use exports to Russia. In Seoul and Tokyo, the mood is different. Both governments now coordinate directly with Ukraine's intelligence teams, marking an unprecedented East-West collaboration. As winter looms, the battlefield may freeze, but the information war will not. Ukraine has shown it can burn through more than steel. It can burn through secrecy itself. The question now echoing through every strategic headquarters is simple yet chilling. If Ukraine's next target lies deeper inside Russia's industrial heart, will Moscow's allies stay silent, or will they finally step back from a war that's starting to eat its own foundations?